Meeting of the Grafton Planning Board, June 11th, 2021.
June 14th.
June 11th, it says June 11th. Oh, revised June 11th. I'm sorry, June 14th, 2021. To order. We're doing this as a hybrid meeting. We're on the last day of the governor's or the legislature's remote meeting protocol law, and they haven't changed it yet. So we'll do this as a hybrid remote meeting like we have been doing over the last year, entirely remote. And everything we say every time about that, it's true. Now let's see. Also, we can consider we're also probably under the classic remote participation, which also means that I have to take all votes by roll call. And I guess that we have to verify that everybody is online and can hear us. Everybody, yeah, everybody who's not sitting here.
Mr. Chairman, would you like me to read the script?
Why don't you do that?
And do the roll call? Yep.
Yeah. Some of these meetings that I do, there is a script, and
Yep.
some there aren't.
Yep. So, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of Open Meeting Law GL 30A, Section 18, and Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the Town of Grafton Planning Board will conduct their meetings and hearings via remote participation. Previously would say no in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but that has now been revised to allow both in-person and public to attend. All participants entering the meeting via a personal computer are required to rename themselves with their official first and last name. Computer participants are encouraged to click on the Participants feature in Zoom to view all participants and to view and use the chat and raise hand features. Computer participants may pin to a particular video screen. We recommend to pin to either the staff or chairman. At the beginning of the meeting, the chairman has identified himself. We will conduct a roll call vote of the board, and the meeting has been called to order. All participants, excluding board members, will be muted throughout the meeting and must use the chat, and other participants must use the chat feature to participate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see one chat. I see the little red one about chat, but I can't see what the chat says.
It's a chat from Vikram Dave
okay.
back in a second. So.
Okay. Shall we go through?
So we can do the roll call vote.
Yeah. Well, not a. It's
sorry.
a check.
Attendance roll call, right?
Sure.
All right. Chris.
So we have present in the meeting. We have Chairman Robert Hassinger,
Aye.
David Robbins,
And I'm here.
Linda Hassinger,
Here.
Prabhu Venkatraman,
I'm here.
Justin Wood,
Here.
and Vikram Dave.
I'm here.
And we have staff Natalia Allward.
Here.
Trish Settles from CMRPC.
I'm here, thank you.
Matt Welter for 8 Pine Street.
Here.
Jean Christie, 8 Pine Street as well.
I'm here.
Elizabeth Manini for 274 Providence Road.
I am here.
Corey Vaccaro, I apologize if I mispronounced that, for 104 Creeper Hill Road.
Yes, I'm here.
And David Janicek for 109 Creeper Hill Road.
I'm here, yes, sir.
Okay. Is that everybody? Okay. first item is public input. This is when we let members of the public talk to us about things that, other than what's on the agenda. If there's anybody looking to talk to us, now is the time. Apparently not. Move on to board reorganization. I think we have a second, looking at that list, by the way, I think we have a second CMRPC appointee that we do too. I only saw the one that comes from the board.
I'll pull up the sheets.
There's a couple of things like that, yeah. All right, for chairman. I'm never quite sure about the way that form is laid out. What I think we've customarily done is to find out who we have, someone wants to nominate, and then we just go by it. You know, it doesn't have to be yes or no for each motion for different people. We just say who we want.
Yes, I imagine if there's only one nominee for each position, then
Then that's easier.
it's easiest. So you're gonna open the floor to nominations for chair?
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for. Are there any nominations?
Well, it can switch between you two again, as far as I'm concerned. Dave, you want to be chair again?
I can handle that.
I nominate Dave Robbins for chair.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other nominations?
Well, that's, okay, I'll nominate Justin Wood. Or are we doing just
No,
chair
we're
right
doing
now?
chair.
Oh, no, I'm not making any other nominations for that.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Well, I'll close the nominations and ask for a vote. We have to do this by roll call.
We do indeed.
I don't particularly. All right. I vote yes. Dave,
Dave votes yes.
Linda,
Yes,
Justin,
Yes.
and Prabhu.
Yes.
Now it's your problem.
Okay, so you're gonna hand the gavel over to me right now, eh? The virtual gavel is now in my hand. Okay, so now we open the floor to nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Justin Wood for vice chair.
I'll accept the nomination.
I guess I could, well, the chair as a rule does not make motions or second them, so we have a nomination and an acceptance. Do we have a second, just for formality here? Do we have any other nominations?
Can I ask a question? I thought when Linda said earlier between Dave Robbins and Bob, you were going to switch those roles.
Nah, that's okay. We'll let Bob be clerk.
No, you won't.
Yes, Bob has the option to decline a nomination.
For which? Wait.
Clerk.
how
But
did
we haven't
get the clerk?
nominated.
We haven't had a second on.
We're getting
vice
ahead
chair.
of ourselves here.
Yes.
So let's move this along. Just to make sure all bases are covered, I want to make sure there's a second for Linda's nomination for Justin as vice chair.
I'll second that.
Okay. And now, are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I still want to make a statement that I thought you guys generally discuss amongst yourself and then come to this agreement. Last time I nominated Dave Robbins and then you guys said, you guys discussed and Bob wants to be the chair. So I hope you guys have this conversation. I'm happy. Continue to second Justin as the vice chair.
Okay, with there being no further nominations for vice chair, we'll call the roll for a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Justin, you are now the vice chair. And next,
Use your power wisely.
choose wisely. Yeah, so we will now open the floor for nominations for clerk.
Yep. I nominate Bob for clerk. Bob Hassinger, just in case.
No,
No?
no. I got out of that my first year in '91. They sent me to CMRPC instead of being clerk
Huh.
when I joined the board, and I don't. Well,
I know it's gonna happen.
if there's, is there anybody else who really wants to be clerk?
I would like to make a nomination. And Linda, this is all with a lot of due respect for you. Bob, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, Linda, I remember the last time or 2 meetings ago, you said this is probably the last term you're running in. I would like to see a woman on one of these leadership positions on the planning board. I don't know in the past if there was one, so I would like to nominate you as a clerk. For the
Okay.
position of a clerk.
Well, I'll accept it.
I'll second that.
All right. Linda Hassinger has been nominated as clerk, and that has been seconded. She has accepted the nomination. Are there any other nominations for clerk? Hearing none, we'll call the roll for a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Linda, you are now our clerk. Congratulations.
Do you have any Dijo?
Sorry.
All right, moving on to the designate members and delegates to various committees and places. First one on the list is Central Mass Regional Planning. Bob has been our delegate, our primary delegate, for a good many years.
All of my years on the board. And I just happened to be chairman of the commission again.
I don't think there's much
the-
choice.
The results were announced Thursday night at our country club, which
Yes.
was a wonderful place to have a meeting.
So let me suggest that the chair would be thrilled to accept a nomination for Bob as our CMRPC delegate.
So nominated.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
And well, we have, the board sends
Two.
2 delegates, so should we handle them both at the same time here? Just to make it, I believe Prabhu has been our delegate for the past year,
Yeah.
and if Prabhu would be interested in continuing it, then the chair would happily entertain a nomination to that effect.
I nominate.
Yes, I'm interested.
Okay, I nominate Prabhu also for CMRPC.
Second.
Okay, so our 2 delegates to CMRPC have been nominated as Bob Hassinger and Prabhu Venkatraman. Are there any others? Hearing none, we'll take a vote on that. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Congratulations on our continuing CMRPC delegates.
Yeah. I should note, in case anybody else in the world is interested, the seat that I've had is required to be a member of the planning board. That the second seat is open to anyone, as are the seats that are set
Select
by
board.
the selectmen.
Right. Okay. Next on the list is the Open Space and Recreation Committee. That has been me.
I'll nominate you.
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none. We'll vote on that. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
Dave votes aye. Just as a note, the Open Space and Recreation Committee, as it has existed, has successfully completed the update of the Open Space and Recreation Plan. The committee as such, as currently constituted, has basically completed its task. However, it is likely that a new incarnation of that committee will be created by the Select Board next month to basically take on the task of coordinating the implementation of the plan, so that the plan does not sit on a shelf and gather dust. So we expect that committee in a new form to continue to exist. Moving on, the Town-Owned Land Committee. There is no such committee at present. There was a proposal last year to create or recreate that committee. So far that has not happened. It's unclear whether that will happen, so for the time being, I would suggest that the board
Leave it.
does not need to designate a member to a non-existent committee.
Agreed.
The next on the list is the Community Preservation Committee, for which Justin has been the board's rep for the past year. Assuming Justin wishes to continue on that, a nomination would be in order. On the chance that someone else would like to take a turn at that, we can, Justin can decline, or we can have another nomination.
So nominated.
Second.
Justin has been nominated and seconded for the board's representative to the Community Preservation Committee. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Moving on, we've got the Grafton Center Study Committee, which I think,
Consists of me. The other members drifted away. Well, it's a committee that I set up when we were studying the center, and the center still needs study.
so that committee technically still exists.
Yeah.
And I would, again, would entertain a nomination for Bob to continue to be the board's representative on the committee of which Bob is currently the only member.
So
So
moved.
nominated. Then second.
Nominated and seconded. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
Dave votes aye.
I'll note that that committee is, concept anyway, is available in case we want to, like if there's anybody else that wants to start getting together on some things. There are definitely things we should talk about around the common, like rationalizing parking rules and, no. all
Yes,
sorts
there's,
of stuff.
there's work to be done, and perhaps
Especially
the
with the new
committee might become
library
active again.
and the new
Could,
parking.
particularly if there was more than one person.
Yes.
Well, it's easy for you to have a quorum.
Well, if there's only one on the, it's a subcommittee of this board.
All right, let's move on here. One last member to designate, and that would be to the Library Planning and Building Committee. Prabhu has been our representative.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that Prabhu be designated the board's representative to the Library Planning and Building Committee. Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll put that to a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye.
Linda, was there a water bottle in the car?
Yes.
Could we just take a minute? I gotta get water.
All right, take just a moment. The board does one last vote on reorganization, as the board needs to take the annual vote to authorize the town planner to sign the payroll, sign A&R plans on behalf of the board.
Actually, we can do that without Bob. That's a simple
Yep.
majority.
We do have a
Still
quorum
have a
to
quorum,
vote on that, so.
Yes.
So
Okay,
moved.
I move that we vote to authorize the planner to sign payroll and anything else, was it?
Anything else the board is?
A&R plans.
And plans.
I suppose you could
Second.
broaden that to that scope to say anything else that the board is empowered to authorize the planner to sign on its behalf.
Yes.
Of which
Second.
there are some things we'd like the planner to be able to sign on our behalf, but we can't.
What's your second back there?
Alrighty, any discussion or any other, yeah, that really doesn't require much of any discussion. So we'll call the roll on that. Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And
Say aye.
Aye.
Bob votes aye, and Dave votes aye. The
That
planner
was-
is officially authorized to sign on behalf of the board for anything for which the board is allowed to delegate that responsibility. Alrighty,
In case anybody wonders, I knew what the item was.
yes, you had a pretty good clue, because you were reading on the agenda and all that good stuff. And it's a routine thing we do every year. So let's move on. We have our next action item, which is an approval not required plan at 21-23 North Brigham Hill Road.
bring up the
Oh,
plan?
yes.
Sure.
Chris
Yep.
is looking for the plan here. We'll put that on the screen as soon as we can. This is from one angle at least, this is simply moving a lot line, although it has some consequences.
Yep, so this is an A&R plan. Essentially what is happening here, and I've spoken with the surveyor, so currently you have lot 21 in parcel A, our one existing lot, creating frontage along kind of the lot lines to be eliminated here. That parcel A is being split off and those lot lines eliminated in order to combine that piece of property with lot 12, which is existing. Of note here is lot 6. The plan indicates that there's no creation of new lots, and the purpose and intent is to adjust the lot lines as depicted. I'll also note that lot 21 is labeled appropriately as not a building lot, as is parcel A. One of the issues that I kind of went to town council with to get an opinion was looking at by splitting this parcel A off of lot 21. This lot becomes landlocked, having no access or frontage off of North Brigham Hill Road or otherwise. In reviewing this with town council, their recommendation was that it is in violation of the 81P statutes, which does require that lots have access and frontage. It's actually the two criteria of which the board does have power to vote on A&R plans. And so her recommendation is to not endorse this plan.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's,
I move we don't endorse this plan for the reasons just outlined.
A second.
Second.
moved and seconded that the board decline to endorse this plan as it does not fall within the criteria allowed for the board to, under 81P, to endorse this.
And just as a procedural, what that would do, I will issue if the board approves this vote, I'll issue an appropriate letter to the town clerk to stop the 20-day period for the board's action. So,
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Bob,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
and Dave votes aye. Declare the motion carried unanimously.
That's the first time I ever remember town council coming that hard down on no. Just a flat no. It's
Well, it's a law and it's either yes or no in this particular
Yeah.
case. It isn't any, well,
Yeah, when you're creating a completely landlocked parcel, that's the consequence.
parcels get landlocked, but I guess it's from other means than just making it that.
yeah, the landlocked parcels, a lot of times those are pre-existing,
Yeah.
whether it's pre-zoning, pre-subdivision, and so that's the purpose of the statutes are mainly to ensure that landlocked parcels are not created, so, amongst other things, but that is a large portion of it. So,
All right, it's the next action item. It's almost 7:30, but not quite. The next action item on our agenda is the bond reduction request at Millstone Drive for Grist Mill Village. And this is likely to involve more than a couple of minutes of discussion. Would it be the board's preference to defer this till after the public hearing so we have more time, or you want to get started? Or Or maybe we can wrap it up real quick in just a few minutes.
Maybe we can do D, and come back to C later.
If there's no objection, we will do exactly that. We will defer action item C and address action item D, which is the determination of minor modification at 104 Creepy Hill Road, submitted by Verizon / Vertical Bridge. And as I understand it, this is a proposed minor modification which consists of swapping out some antennas and radio equipment on the cell tower.
Correct. So this is mainly a like for like. I believe it was 4 pieces of equipment that are being replaced for largely the same equipment. No new installation. Let me just pull up the plans. Sorry.
The material, and again, I may not have found all the material,
Very dense.
but mostly what I found was a letter from, I guess it's the tower owner to one of their tenants saying, okay, I don't see all of the stuff we usually see
It was way down.
about what's being asked for. Maybe, they
I had
need
to
to
scroll-
apply to us.
I had to scroll way down to the bottom to find that. And well, even at that, yes, I didn't see an actual application to us. I saw some
Right.
plans.
So, just as some kind of procedural background, the applicant for this project applied for a building permit for this work, and during that process, that's when it was indicated from the building department that they need the typical determination of minor modification. And so, in terms of the determination of minor modification, we typically do get a narrative, but in this case, I pulled from the building permit application the materials that were presented there.
Yeah, but we're normally asked not only to, first to find that it's a minor modification, and then to act on the minor modification, and we don't have a request for action.
Yeah, there is that one missing piece from the paperwork, an actual letter from the applicant requesting us to find a minor modification, and we do usually get that.
Yes. This doesn't have any time on it, does it? We get so many days to act on applications. There's no application here, so I move we pass over. Or
Yeah,
table.
It's certainly up to the
How about
certainly up to
table
the
it?
board.
Table it pending receipt of some formal paperwork requesting the minor modification. That would seem to me to be appropriate.
Then you can figure
We've
out.
got all the material here, we just, we'd like to have a formal request to act on.
Then we're gonna have
Hello.
to figure how
I'm
to
sorry, this
remove-
is Corey Vaccaro. I was the one who submitted the building permit originally. I guess just to offer my input here. I guess obviously, like we've discussed, this would be a minor modification to the existing antenna installation that's on the cell tower. Obviously, I see, or can hear the discourse back and forth that you would request a formal submittal. Is that something that I'd be able to submit at a later date? Just at this point, to keep this whole process moving and to keep the building permit application process moving along.
I think once we have the letter, which, can be covered on our next meeting, you're only talking 2 weeks, and it'll be then, just immediately go through. I think, though, that normally we do have an intro into it.
Yeah, we don't have any requests to act on right now. Even, we have to have something we make a decision about before we could have a condition about submission. I moved that we tabled it, that we table it.
Yeah, I think we have all the information here that we would be looking for, except for the formal request. And, yeah, and these things, normally an action like this is pretty routine. We've seen plenty of these. It's likely to be considered. I won't promise the board's action until we actually have a formal request, but, this is, it's pretty typical that, this takes almost no time at all to act upon, but yes, to make sure that, just to make sure that, and it's a bit of a process question, but yes, essentially a formal letter requesting the determination that this is a minor modification to accompany the material that we already have in front of us, I think would be ideal.
Customarily, they point out how they fit within the new FCC rules about when we pretty much have to do it, and when if they're doing more of a change than a certain amount, then we go to a formal process. Yeah. But all of the applications we've gotten have explained this is, within so many feet, and this is so much, and so on, so that we don't have to read their drawings and try to figure out the rules.
Yeah, so you should be able to work with Chris here and get that taken care of.
Me to get it in 2
In
weeks.
plenty of time for the board to act on that request, most likely favorably in 2 weeks.
Sorry.
So formally, I'll second Bob's motion to table this.
All right, any other discussion on the motion to table? Hearing none. Bob,
All right.
Linda,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
and Dave votes aye. All
I
right,
don't think we've ever, in my time, tabled something, and certainly never taken from the table. We'll have to figure that out. Because almost everything we do is a request from the applicant to continue.
yes.
But we don't, that doesn't happen.
So it is now slightly past 7:30, and it is time for the public hearing schedule, after which we will take up the remaining action items and discussion items and general business. So the first public hearing on our schedule is a new one.
Oh, I don't have. Am I
I
supposed
I
to
can
read something?
6A.
So Linda, I'll pull up the public hearing notices for this meeting and read them to
Okay.
make things better.
Justin, as the former clerk, will take one last clerk action and read the notice for this one, right?
Yes.
I don't even know where you find them.
When you come to these reorganizations,
Pursuant
you have to be prepared
Pursuant
to do
to section
anything.
1.3.3 of the Town of Grafton zoning bylaw, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, June 14th, 2021, commencing at 7:30 p.m. to consider an application for site plan approval for a renovation to include a mixed-use one residential unit on the upper level and artist studio space on the lower level on property located at 308 Providence Road and shown as Grafton Assessor's Map 124, Lot 7. Said property is located in a village and neighborhood mixed-use VMU zoning district. The applicant is Todd Cahill and Amy Hinch, Factory Cat Incorporated, and the owner is Peter B. Scotanis. I apologize, I said that wrong. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March stay-at-home advisory, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Please see www.grafton-ma.gov/planning board for more information.
All right, so let's introduce the project here, and the board can proceed to discuss.
Yep. So this project is looking at reuse of a property was formerly the museum. The current proposed use is actually mixed use as sculpture artist space as well as residential space. This proponent has been to development team meeting to discuss how that works in terms of the building code and in terms of this space. I think It's a very interesting project, certainly geared towards what mixed use is looking at, and certainly unique. But the applicant has been very forthcoming and working diligently with development team, meeting to look at how this fits into the existing regulations. And I note that they are here today. They can probably give a good idea of what specifically they're proposing in terms of the uses on the property, and give a introduction as well to this site.
Okay, so I'm Todd and this is Amy. And so what we are proposing is described pretty effectively in the zoning bylaws under 1.1 building diagram 12-2-286-2A as a live work shop house. And it describes, just as you said, like with a living residential unit upstairs, and our workspace, which will be a sculpture studio and a drawing studio as well. I make mechanical devices and objects and sculpture, as well as do illustration and drawing as well. Yeah, like I said, we got a plot plan done and have, gotten approval for our loan, and have met with the fire department in town to find out what we might need to address to make this all possible. We realize that this special permit grants us permission to carry forth, to carry on. This is the last thing that will, before closing occurs next week. The next step, is this is the next step before we can proceed. We realize that it doesn't meet certain criteria, but according to the site the lot standards on the zoning bylaws, it meets many of the issues, and some of them we can't meet by extending the backyard per se to 10 feet or whatever. We only have 3 feet in there. So I'm familiar with the area. I've talked to one of the, not quite in a butter, but a neighbor down the street that I know, and she's given us verbal permission if we can't meet parking standards. But for the most part, my shop and my studio will not keep hours, so to say. So there won't be store hours where the public can come through. It's mostly for meeting with clients and executing the work at home. What more do you need to know? What information that I haven't already given you do we need to know to proceed?
This is a site plan.
This is a site plan approval. Correct.
Yeah, if I understand the use regulation schedule, this falls into the category, probably the best fit category is artist live work.
Correct.
And that in the village mixed use district, that is a site plan approval, no special permit.
Correct.
So it does have to meet the criteria for site plan approval, and with any waivers that might be requested.
I don't see any request for waivers, and I'm sure I don't know where there is or isn't compliance with anything that we need to be concerned with.
As I understand it too, this is an existing building, and there are no no building footprint changes proposed, no changes in parking area proposed. Also, as I understand it, there is no retail component. This is not a shop that is generally open to the public. So, and I haven't taken the time to try to look up the appropriate parking requirements for a use such as this. So I can't speak off the top of my head to how well, or in what ways this does or does not fit or meet all the requirements.
We said this is the what has been the State Police Museum.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes. So
It currently it still is.
is, but are they leaving then? Well, they must be.
Yeah, I mean, well, when we take possession, we will give them 3 months or more notice, depending on what we negotiate with them. But the current owner and his real estate agent has been reluctant to let us talk to them, just because they weren't sure that this would all go through. You know, I'm always been positive that it's been going through, that it's going to go through, and that I wanted to talk to them. But we just got to wait until we close. I mean, they know now if they read the paper that something is happening in the building that they possess. And I don't know what the status of the Worcester Street barracks is. But yeah, the plan is for them to leave.
I noticed that I thought it was an addition over on Worcester Street to their sign. I don't remember it being there before on the top saying future home, suggesting
Right.
a move back. So maybe they do know
current
something.
They're a tenant at will, and current agreement is to give them 3 months notice.
Oh, okay.
But we're willing to work with them once we can talk to them, to figure out just when this is all going to happen. I know to do the build out is going to take some time. The residential part of this project.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Are there any questions or comments from the public? I see no public in the meeting room here, but there may be some public on Zoom.
There are 20-some 23 participants total.
But, if any of the Zoom participants want to ask a question or make a comment about this particular project, now would be a good time to let us know by way of chat or Q&A
Raise hand.
or raise hand.
I just had a question. I'm just curious, can this be, since it's related to art and sculpting, can it be a teaching place as well? Can you use it as teaching place, Mr. Cale?
It could potentially have school groups or something like that within it. I currently do that in my studio at Waltham. Have different groups and open studios, but nothing is planned for the time being.
Okay.
The important part is to get the work done, to make this happen. But I would be very open to having school groups come in or whatever one-on-one type of.
The reason my question was just because of parking. You know, if potentially it goes into that, that might be a consideration to be taken.
Right. That's where I got permission from the abutter to handle overflow parking if necessary.
Yes, I believe I saw pop up on the Q&A that comment from what sounds like the abutter.
Yep, so I'll read the comment. So, Richard Chiros, I apologize if I mispronounced that, 7 Depot Street, is in full support and has additional parking available, provides the same for the Museum of State Police.
Yep. That wasn't the person that I talked to, but I do know him. So I have 2 people offering me parking.
So we ought to have a record of that, either from them or from the chat in our record. Once in a while, we look at the parking in that way, and I can think of a couple cases. That should at least be what we were thinking of when we got here.
So there was one thing I picked out from what you said, Mr. Cahill, is that this is the last thing you're waiting on until you close next week. The thing to mention is that at best case, we would close the public hearing today, and then we'd have a decision that we would then vote on and act on at our next public meeting, which is the 28th of June.
Okay.
That's our best case. I don't know yet that we're ready to close the public hearing, but that was just to articulate.
Right. We are scheduled to close on the 24th, but whatever it takes to, this is after moving it back once a month. But we would like to know that that's as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, as Justin said, this is a process question, and that
Okay.
Following this public hearing, the board likely, if for any reason, and we've done this fairly often, we've had a couple of items outstanding, additional information to be received, we may keep the public hearing open, but whether we close the public hearing tonight or continue it with the expectation of closing it next time, we can have staff draft a decision so that the board can act on a decision at the next meeting and basically issue it. Of course, a further note on the process side of things is once the board has issued the decision, the site plan approval in this case, there is then an appeal period which has to elapse before the decision can truly be considered final. Just on the off chance that somebody decides they really think that something's wrong, they could appeal the decision. That rarely happens, but that's sort of the process. It just has to play out, and
Sure.
it's as fast as we can make it go.
Okay. I understand that. We can do what we need to do to work with that schedule.
And you'll probably get a pretty good sense from the discussion tonight as to the way the decision is likely to go.
Yes, yeah, and the whole time nobody has ever given me a hard no, so I just keep on bumbling my way through this thing. I'm very positive about the direction I feel it is going, or will eventually go.
We got a chance here just for a minute to, do you do work and then sell it, or do you do commission?
Both. I do work and sell it. Yeah, I have an international clientele for some of my sculpture, and I just finished this morning actually a book illustration job commission for a book about quantum theory.
So your medias are that do work in
are metal in for sculpture, cast iron and steel and machined parts, and my medium for drawing is usually like a very fine pen and ink depiction of mostly architecture and steam engines. And so forth.
Welding, right? You must have welding.
No welding.
No.
Mostly fabricated stuff. Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from the board, from the public? Any information? Did I hear somebody? Prabhu?
Yes, Dave. I think it might be more for Chris. Chris, do we have any idea where is the police museum going? Are they shifting within town back to their older location?
So I actually don't specifically have information on that. I have been approached by the State Police Museum in terms of looking at what locations would be conducive, but beyond that, I haven't heard any formal switch in location that they have decided on. So.
Okay. And Mr. Cahill, I live pretty close by, so we are going to miss the police museum, and you're welcome to the neighborhood.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Any information that
we're
we
very
need?
excited.
there any other information the board needs before we can close the hearing?
I think the board was requesting a list of waivers, and that's something I'd be happy to work with the applicant to develop.
Yeah, that is true. The given that the applicant had told us, testified here that there are some requirements that they don't fully meet, I think that would be appropriate to have a formal list of waivers for the board to, so that we're sure that we know what's out of the ordinary here. But
Sure.
given that, is there anything that you're aware of that could be construed to be a problem in terms of approval?
Not that I saw.
Okay. So with that said, then I would suggest, as we discussed earlier, that the way this can go is the board can informally direct staff to prepare a draft decision and work with the applicant to prepare an appropriate list of waivers, and for us to continue this hearing until our next meeting 2 weeks from tonight, at which point we can expect to receive the additional information, close the hearing, and complete the work on the decision.
We should ask them to ask
So
us.
I should wait to hear from you, Chris?
Yeah, so I'll probably reach out tomorrow, and I'll coordinate with you on terms of a list of waivers. We have a form that you can fill out, and we can go through that together.
Okay.
Yeah, meanwhile, in order for us to continue this hearing, it would be appropriate for us to get a written request from the applicant requesting said continuation. And as we have been doing during this Zoom time, we basically accept a verbal request from the applicant to be followed up by a written request, typically by email. So if you're willing, if you're willing to move ahead on this, and as we've suggested, we'll just we'll take it. We'll ask you to formally sort of to state your request for continuation, follow that up with a written request.
Okay, so a verbal, I would like to request an extension, a continuation of this process to go forward and in preparation for another hearing.
That's
Is that
good.
what it is?
Yeah.
I move we grant the to be written request to continue this until our next meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's written request to be received as soon as practical to continue this hearing to Monday, June 28th at 7:30 p.m. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. This hearing is hereby continued, and as noted, you will work with Chris to circle back on the waivers, and Chris will work on drafting a decision for us to review at the close of the hearing. But thank you. Thank you, Todd and Amy.
Okay, thank you for your time.
We'll
Yep.
see you in 2
Bye.
weeks.
Thank you.
All righty. Moving on then. We have 109 Creeper Hill Road, the continuation of our hearing from the last meeting. So, where are we at with that?
Good evening, everyone. This is David, new site owners of the formerly Triano Trekking, so this is Feedback Earth. The current status is that we are here to address any concerns that the planning board may have. It is my understanding that there is an outstanding third-party review. To my knowledge, those comments are still pending. Chris, maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yep, so Graves is reviewing for both planning board and conservation. There's been some back and forth, and we are awaiting a final letter from Graves at this time.
Do we have anything else new since the last time?
We have responded like this. There was a comment about a concrete pad expansion not meeting setbacks. We have actually eliminated the concrete pad expansion from our scope. That is no longer in the scope. We have also received a comment from the fire department saying that they are all set with everything and all the things ever. Well, we'll see. But in favor of at least for the current status. Those are the updates.
We probably should get somehow the change in the concrete pad ought to be reflected in a document.
It is in the updated site plan, yes, sir.
Yeah, so we did receive revised plans with the.
I see last revised, I see here May 5th. Is that? No, I'm looking at, yes.
Yeah.
May 5th.
So I would expect that we will see the peer review from Graves. We will see the applicant's response to the peer review. We will see updated plans. It usually happens that as a follow-up to the peer review, some plan revisions are made. So at this point, it sounds like we would be expecting the report, the peer review report, the applicant's follow-up to the peer review report, which likely will include revised plans, which should reflect the concrete pad change.
Yes, sir.
If that wasn't on the previous revised plan.
The most recent revised plan, I don't see it posted on there. I believe we sent it June 6th or thereabouts. But I'll follow up with Chris to make sure that that gets updated. And my ambition, right, is exactly like you said, to receive the comments this week, to prepare our responses there too, so that if it lines up for the June 28th meeting, for a decision to be made on that day.
Yeah, no, the last plan I see us having is from 5/5, which was wetland and riverfront location revisions.
All right, so is there anything else we need to address tonight on this hearing in that regard? I think mostly it sounds like we're waiting for more information. There are no other open issues before the board right at this point.
I believe we have sufficient information for a draft decision if the board so chooses.
So if staff is able to begin drafting a decision, then there is some hope that, as with the previous project, we will receive all the required information in time for it to be thoroughly reviewed and acted upon at our next meeting. Worst case, if things don't move quite as quickly as we all might hope they would, we can continue this hearing in any case to the 28th. And if more time is needed to wrap up the last details, so be it. I mean, I always take the position that I don't want this board to rush the applicant through. We'll give you as much time as you need to get everything done and to get all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed. But our staff has just suggested that he believes he's in possession of sufficient information to begin drafting a decision. So the most optimistic outcome will be that we can complete the hearing in 2 weeks and vote out a decision.
Gotcha.
And if
yes, sir. Do I request a continuance here, or would that be a mistake?
That would be appropriate at this time for you to request a continuation. And
as always, hereby request a continuation.
As always, you'll follow that up with a written request for the record.
I will do so to Ms. Alward.
Move that we grant the applicant's request for a continuation until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's written request to continue this hearing to Monday, June 28th at 7:30 p.m. Whether it be a completely in-person meeting or a meeting with a remote component has yet to be determined.
Yeah, in a little while.
We may know more later tonight about that, or if not later tonight, later this week. You never know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's immaterial to the motion under discussion.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion of the motion to continue, except the continuation? Hearing none. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
Dave votes aye. This hearing is continued for 2 weeks. Thank you, and we'll look forward to receiving the rest of the information and maybe wrapping this up if at all possible.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the enthusiasm. You can expect the same from me. Thanks, and have a good night.
Thank you. All right, our third and final public hearing for the evening will be regarding 8 Pine Street. And where are we at with that one?
So in terms of 8 Pine Street, some of the follow-up items that the board was requesting was coordination with DPW in regards to the rapid flashing beacons and maintenance of sidewalks along the portion of towards the train station. I did reach out to Paul Canoyer, and they did mention that they have no issues with the rapid flashing beacons. They feel that they would be able to maintain those and are happy to accept those. In terms of the shoveling of sidewalks, and that section of sidewalk, actually technically it's done currently under agreement with Tufts for most of a portion of it, where the town and Tufts coordinate on that shoveling. DPW is confident that they would be able to either, if there's a portion that needs to be extended to connect it with this site, that would be able to be included, whether DPW picks up the rest of it or works it into the contract with Tufts, but they don't see any issue with having to shovel that portion. And I believe we did receive comments from Fire as well, that they found pretty much everything to be in compliance. I know we have Matt Welter and Gene Christie. I don't know if they want to speak to that in a little more detail and the remainder of items for the project.
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you again. For the record, I'm Jean Christie, Senior Engineer with Ty and Bond. As Chris mentioned, yeah, we did hear from the fire department. And kind of in parallel to that, we did receive some comments back from Graves Engineering. And one of them was kind of relative to the fire department. So I wanted to explain that one a little bit more. Graves has recommended that the board include a condition of approval, if you get there, that allows the fire department to kind of test run the drive aisle around the back of the residential building before a certificate of occupancy can be provided. They just want to make sure that all those turning movements really do work the way we've modeled them. And the fire department has no problem reaching everything they need to back there. So I wanted to just point that out as one thing. As I mentioned, Graves did provide a response or a follow-up review. We received that maybe a week and a half ago or so. I provided a response back on this past Friday, and I know you haven't all seen that or digested any of it. So I'll give you that opportunity to do so. I think we're in the home stretch with that one. I think there are probably a couple things that need to be revised on the drawings, which would include incorporating that rapid flashing beacon and some signage for that southern driveway at the retail building, as we discussed with the traffic presentation last time we met. So we need to include that in the drawings. And then I think we're also looking for a final letter from the traffic peer reviewer. I think we're expecting they'll be able to issue a clean letter with maybe some condition recommendations, but I believe that's it. I believe we're in the home stretch. Unless Matt, I forgot something, or Chris.
Sorry, I actually have an update on the MDM traffic peer review. I just looked back at my email. I apologize. I thought you were tagged on this one. They understood that the meeting was coming up, but they weren't able to complete a formal letter. They did email me with just 3 little items that I think would be able to be addressed either conditionally or as a condition of approval if the board so decided. The first one is the site distances, looking at the no disturb zone with trees and vegetation. It's just that the existing trees there, some of the vegetation with the elevations seem to conflict with some of the site distances, and so they wanted to see a little bit more in terms of depicting the sight lines on the plans in relation to the existing vegetation, something a little bit more robust there. I'll forward this email, which goes in a little bit more technical detail than I'm really qualified to go into. And then the other main one was the TDM programming, transit development models, and so that is related to MBTA commuter rail. And looking at those, there's actually a TDM program that the state does in relation to TOD developments, and they were looking for some more of that detail to be memorialized on the plan. I think much of it is probably already met, but just to have it affixed to the plans to kind of memorialize it was what they were looking for. So
Sure. And to kind of circle back on the sightlines item, we are meeting tomorrow night with the Conservation Commission. It might be prudent of us to ask them about maybe some pruning of the trees that are, we can't cut them down in the no disturb zone, but maybe we can take some of the limbs off that are, encroaching onto the street. So we'll talk to them about that.
Anything else at this point from you guys, the applicant? Sounds to me like there's mostly a lot of little details to be. Probably the big thing is to wrap up with conservation and follow up from that, and a few other odds and ends. You need a chance to respond to the traffic peer review update. Or anything from the board? Nothing from the board. Anything from any member of the public who might be attending this hearing and interested in raising a question or comment? Because if nothing else, it sounds like we have some additional information to come in. No major issues left open. I will note that one last comment from the fire department had to do with a Knox box and adequacy of the gate to accommodate the fire equipment, which there was some suggestion that could be taken care of in a condition of the decision. If you are revising plans for other purposes, to whatever extent it's appropriate to include that on the plans, that would be cool. I mean, the more we have documented before we complete the decision, the less we have to worry about conditions, but we can handle it either way, I'm sure it sounds like.
Yeah, I think we can get those on the plans, and I agree, the fewer conditions, the better.
Yep. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So with that said, other than awaiting additional information and plan revisions as necessary, is there anything else that we need to cover this evening?
I don't think I have anything. Matt, I don't know if you do.
If not,
No, not this time.
a request to continue this hearing to June 28th would be appropriate.
You may be coming down on this one.
We request that.
Okay, and as you know, you'll follow that up with a written
Follow
request
up
for
with the
continuation.
written.
I move that we grant the applicant's request to continue this hearing until our next meeting on June 28th, pending a written request.
Yeah. Is this another situation, Chris, where you feel you're in a position to begin drafting a decision?
I do.
Okay.
That was my motion, seconded.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded that the board grant the applicant's request to continue this hearing to Monday, June 28th at 7:30 p.m. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. This hearing is now continued. Thank you, and we look forward to, I think, wrapping this up if all goes well.
Hope so. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
And then we'd like to see the project actually get built, but that's a whole other story.
That's the easy part.
Oh, yeah. What, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that?
Problem.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let me see where we're at. All right, so we can now circle back to the action items on our agenda.
How much time does Trish need? What,
Trish has been very patiently waiting here.
she shook her head no, but I don't know what that means.
Not much, not
All
much
right.
time at all.
Okay, so I know I believe we have someone also waiting for 274 Providence Road. Let's see, we took care of 104 Creeper Hill. Action item E, 274 Providence Road. That's an approval of a covenant. And where are we at with that? I seem to recall that we were interested in getting town council's feedback on that.
Yes, so I did discuss this with town council. As the board, I'm sure, remembers, this is for a special permit site plan approval. Part of the language that was included in the decision alluded to covenant as a requirement for approval. In discussing with town council, that was language I believe early on in my start here that is more appropriate for subdivision roads and not the board does not typically do that for site plan or special permit, and so that I would respectfully suggest is more of an administrative error, and town council has requested that that's something that can be passed over. We may want to look at a determination of minor modification to remove that language from the decision. But it's not a normal course of action for the board to bond such projects.
Is our agenda notice sufficient to move a minor modification? Or move the change that you suggested?
No, because it's listed as covenant approval.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's that's not within the scope of the agenda item, so this would be something, Chris, where you would, between you and town council and the applicant, we would work out a request for a minor modification to cover that particular condition.
Correct.
Suggest we just continue this to the next meeting.
Well,
The applicant,
This is Elizabeth Minini from Gary and Hellman. My only question is to the best of my knowledge, the Mylars for the plan have not been signed yet because we were waiting for we were waiting to figure out if covenant information needed to go on the Mylars. Would we have to wait until the not having signed Mylars is actually holding up his ability to continue? Oh, they are signed? Okay, well then never mind.
take it from someone who knows that and we who signed it probably should remember what we signed. We just sign on the dotted line. We don't know what we're signing, right?
It does. So the plan, what Natalia is saying is that it does list the covenant on the Mylars, so there is a spot for us to put it in there. I don't know. I guess if you can check with town council, we can just put the book and page for the decision where it says covenant. That way it refers to the document that it should refer to.
yeah, I would suggest, or if the applicant and board is amenable, we can just X out that block and leave it blank. I think that
As far as
I'll coordinate with the registry of deeds and see what they're
as far as I can tell, there's nothing we need to do tonight. We don't have to vote anything.
no, so the plans are signed. I guess since the board has already voted and signed the previous version, if the board wants to just request a clean sheet and we can have it re-signed.
I suggest you do whatever seems right.
Yeah, that's probably best for you to work. And anything more you need to work out between town council and the applicant. If to make sure the base is properly covered, if we do modify the decision to eliminate that requirement, then if that would be appropriate, then we can bring that. We can take care of that at our next meeting. But between now and then, work out and if there is no further action required on the part of the board, great. If there is, just kind of work that out between meetings, and then at our next meeting we can take whatever action turns out to be most appropriate to take care of this particular situation.
Should we, however, have a motion to allow the planner to pursue this, or,
He doesn't need permission to, look into it.
okay,
If there's something, if they find there's something we need to do, they'll come to us. Otherwise,
so just do it.
In the best of all possible worlds, the board will not have to hear about this ever again.
Understood.
In the worst of all possible worlds, we'll have to make some sort of a vote next time.
yes, I think we have to schedule at least 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we circle back to Gristmill Village, let's skip down to what Trish has been
3A.
patiently waiting for, which is Mill Redevelopment Overlay District, correct?
Correct, yes. So I've been coordinating with CMRPC in terms of starting the Mill Redevelopment Overlay District. We did have a team change from the previous CMRPC representatives who were working on the project with us. So I did hold a meeting and went over the goals of the project with the new project representatives. The board, just as a refresher, we did receive draft kind of language and some literature review for the Mill Redevelopment Overlay. The board's request was looking at additional language and review of actual industrial uses. It was the review that was given was largely related to adaptive reuse into commercial and residential space with some industrial, but they were looking for more robust review of the industrial type uses. And so we've coordinated with CMRPC for the DLTA funding to work on this project and to get that review. So I think that will be forthcoming in our last meeting. I believe they'll be working on that in advance of the June 28th meeting, and I would anticipate at least a cursory presentation of some of that review. Part of the project then, after the review of the language, is actually to draft the language for town meeting vote. And obviously that would be coordinated with town staff, but that's kind of where we are in that.
Okay. Anything you want to add to that, Trish?
No, just thanks for inviting us, and my apologies. I think, as Chris pointed out, we've had a little bit of a originally that you were working on this with Ron Barron, and Ron has since left our organization. And then Ian McElwee, who was supposed to be here this evening, got called to another meeting and had kind of double booked himself. So I'm kind of the substandard stand-in for Ian. But he had asked if I would sit in and ask you guys a little bit more about some of those industrial uses that you kind of foresee for the Mill Village overlay, that I could kind of prompt you for some more information on that I could give back to him as he starts drafting some of the model bylaw language for you guys.
Yeah. Well, as far as the potential industrial uses, I know my own thinking, and this is just me, and every member, other board members may chip in and give you their view, but I was thinking in terms of uses that might be kind of in line with the historic use of an existing mill building, of which there aren't that many, but there are some, and there may be, and it's sort of it's one of the reasons I think we sort of punted it to you, is that you may be able to get a better sense of what really would be appropriate. But for an existing mill building, there are probably some industrial type uses that really wouldn't do well at all. But to the extent that there are, and I don't know exactly, I haven't really tried to think this through, but I was kind of looking for allowance of some sort of use of a mill building for and something that's more industrial in nature, although not necessarily really heavy industry, but something that would be kind of compatible with the historic use of the building, but also compatible with the, sort of the current neighborhood. And I think that's probably more in terms of its potential impact on the neighborhood, but, inside the building, a little bit more flexibility. And just sort of another observation on sort of, not so much on that track, but more generally on mill use is, what's fairly common around the Commonwealth is, the redevelopment of a mill building into, residential or mixed residential and more retail-oriented commercial. And so what was missing from that is, the idea, to the extent that it turns out to be practical, to adapt a building to a more industrial oriented use that we can somehow consider to be overall compatible.
Are we,
Go ahead, sorry.
are we looking for, I don't remember now whether we have a special permit as part of this? Because the special permit gives the flexibility without having to spell out every possible use. Maybe this emphasizes the need to be compatible. We have our normal compatibility. Maybe expand on that a bit.
I would say quite possibly we would want this to be under a special permit and not as of right, and not simply site plan review. But it strikes me as being something that's more appropriate for a special permit.
Because I think that helps cover that ground, at least for me. That's kind of the point of special permits, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, it does tend to be.
Is there some guidance about kind of the volume of, Dave, you were talking about, light industrial, not heavy industrial. Can you give me a little bit of more detail around that? Is it to the degree that you can, we'll go out and look for kind of common descriptions of possible uses, whether it's, number of not number of employees, but traffic patterns, times of operation. Is this a 3-shift kind of mill reuse? Is this, materials that they're using, or kind of preclusions on materials that they might be using? Limits on hazardous materials. I think a lot of our mills are challenges because historically they were, they may or may not have had hazardous materials, and that's often why they're hard cleanup sites, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's.
And we have one particularly notorious example of that. The mill building burned down, but
Right.
it remains, or it had been for years, and I think it still remains a difficult site from a hazardous material perspective. But then that mill building is gone. So, but as an example of the kind of things you mentioned, that it's certainly conceivable that a mill building that exists today may still have some issues with hazardous materials. And I don't have any really good sense of how to parameterize that or characterize what might be acceptable and what might not be. Haven't given enough thought to the spectrum of industrial uses that might be appropriate.
Right. That's why I suggest just some strong discretionary support in what we say, even saying this is the only way we can figure out how to say this. But I'm not sure I'd want any 50,000 ton hydraulic presses operating in it, and anything that goes bang, bang, bang at night, and things that would bother either the people or the air and the land and whatnot in the area. If they want to work 3 shifts, as long as parking and everything is okay. Some of the historical uses, though, are like weaving, textiles, and that can be a little bit heavy.
Oh,
Yes,
and
and
very noisy.
And also not likely to be something
Not
anybody
likely to
wants
come,
to develop these
but
days.
you were encouraging historic uses in the
Yeah,
building, so you gotta be careful.
Yeah, it's, yeah, you have to be, you can't really picture, what the mills were doing in the 20s, necessarily being brought back, for any number of reasons, but something that's comparable in intensity could be problematic as well.
Yeah, and I think, kind of going back to the earlier, the artist who was talking about taking the museum, I mean, a lot of the mill uses are now kind of more artisan uses, the weaving, if it were, a metallurgy kind of artist kind of space. Those have become popular in some of the rehabbed mills.
I've seen
And I
some of
think the other thing we're seeing is a lot, especially in the region, and we're just talking about this at CMRPC, is the influx of distribution. I mean, it could easily become warehousing, and is that something that you would perceive? I mean, that's industrial. It's maybe not the highest best use that you would want to see. It's not gonna, but so distribution of big warehouses, distribution facilities, storage.
Yeah. That's an interesting question. I suspect that the scale that the distribution people are operating at these days is generally far larger than any existing mill building we have in Grafton.
The distribution things that we've been seeing, the buildings wouldn't even be suitable, and the parking lot whatnot might not be suitable, but as time goes on and we have more and more last mile service, if you know what I mean, kind of like UPS, local UPS, it's not out of the question that sort of thing could happen. Yeah. I like the idea we're starting on an artist thing right next to one of our most interesting mills.
Yes.
And I've always wanted that to be considered.
Yeah, so that's the kind of thing that fits a little bit more with what's relatively common as mill reuse, and that probably fits in with some of the language that's already been proposed. But yeah, Linda, did you have your hand up a while ago?
No, because this is something that I'm really familiar with, believe it or not, from Baltimore. That the downtown harbor area of Baltimore had a huge sort of rebirth to it, with mills and old manufacturing areas being being turned into housing and all kinds of things. One was a tool manufacturing, Renneberg, and the effect that it had on the harbor area was really remarkable. It rejuvenated that entire area. And, obviously we're not a big city and we're not really affected by that. But still.
Yeah, Baltimore is just a pretty phenomenal example of.
Yeah. It's almost dazzling to me when I go back there. It's not home anymore. I don't remember it. But anyway, yes.
All right.
It's near and dear to my heart.
I see Justin's hand up.
His hand up for a very long time.
I'm patient. Yep. So for me, like, I grew up in Southbridge. I don't know how familiar people are with that town, but there's a pretty big mill complex there that used to be housed the American Optical Company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one type of industrial use I would foresee as being okay around here, like the machine shop, mechanical, assembly. Textiles is also one thing I also think of around this. Even chemicals like hazardous materials, I'm not so sure about. I also know that Southbridge in particular does not have that much residential near their mills. At least not like Grafton does anyway. So I could see a degree of severity in the choices we would allow near residential complexes as well, if that makes sense.
Prabhu, did you have something?
Yes, sir. More for a question for Ms. Settles. Has CMRPC seen any examples of old mills being maintaining the integrity of the building, but converting that in for educational purposes. When I say educational purposes, extension, satellite schools like UMass Medical School, can they have a satellite school here or something of that kind?
I think going back to Justin's point, in Southbridge, the American Optics campus is now being used by Quinn Sig, if I understand correctly.
It is.
And the other part that is so, and this leads me kind of to the next part of that is, and I wasn't certain I understood Dave correctly, but there are a number of mills that have been repurposed into residential. Artist live workspace. There's a model in Marlboro, if I remember right, where it's you've got these great big huge open spaces that are propped up, usually that because of the architecture of the building. You've got some pretty major floor structural columns and stuff in there, and you end up with these great big open spaces that have been turned into artist live workspaces and chopped up into these pretty phenomenal looking kind of residential places, and that somebody can work. So is that not what you don't want that? Is that what I'm understanding? You want to go much more kind of manufacturing, industrial, and not residential. Is that correct?
I think my thinking at least is I'd like to provide a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
That is,
Okay.
it's not so much that we're not interested in some of the more more common reuses, but rather those are all attractive or could be attractive, but it's just like we want to expand that territory a little bit more to kind of maximize the flexibility that the owner has to reuse or redevelop the mill space.
Yeah.
It's almost like I want to say almost like anything goes except there are certain limits.
Except some things, and yes, but
Right.
I would.
I mean, the quintessential kind of model is the Mass Mocha Mill, right? Which is this huge museum out in North Adams
Yeah.
that is, phenomenal. So, I mean, that's huge, but again, not a typical industrial use, but I'm more going back to that museum or a different kind of higher, I don't know what the words are on this. More traffic in there. Parking lots are huge, but it's a beautiful building. It generates lots of revenue for the town.
I would, when you say residential, I wouldn't say no. I'd say mostly focused on really strong, affordable
It's very good point.
if we could get some really attractive, affordable development, we need that. So, some room in that area, but I think we have more residents than we have businesses, and we like to have more businesses.
Yeah. Okay. It's good. And it would going back to that. So would a mixed use type of development be something that might where you have maybe first floor commercial and then you have upper level residential or something like that? Is mixed use again going back to Dave's ultimate flexibility? I think that.
I'm very much in favor of encouraging mixed use.
Yeah, if it's strongly affordable.
Yeah.
I agree. I think mixed use would make some of the industrial aspects not really feasible for having apartments above you, but yes, I'm in favor of flexibility here.
And then lastly, it's one of my favorite thoughts, is being able to, if you go out to Montague, there are some mills that have been redeveloped into agricultural uses where they're doing hydroponics in some of the mills because of kind of the proximity to the water. They're growing mushrooms or they're fish farming or a variety of things. So,
I can say that without being too specific or anything else, that a use along those lines is one thing that I know one mill owner has expressed an interest in.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Fantastic. Great. Well, I think this gives us a little bit more kind of substance that we can kind of go out and look for some models, and then we'll come back to you and kind of try and fine tune this, you know, decide if there's stuff that's totally off the table because of, you know, various kind of characteristics of that type of development. I know that the other one thing that Ian had asked me, I don't know if this actually fits somewhere else in the agenda, is just my understanding is you guys are moving toward the Complete Streets effort that Chris is going to be developing the policy, which then moves you into the whole kind of pipeline of Complete Streets. And so we're very eager to kind of help you guys out when it gets to that tier 2 phase.
Yep.
So if you have any questions around the policy or anything like that, please reach out. I know that Ian and Pharaoh, one of our members of our transportation team, and are eager to kind of come out maybe in the fall and kind of get to work on some of the field work for you guys.
Yeah, I would think our situation with Complete Streets is pretty much like a lot of the communities. Got a lot of old streets that don't really have the room, and both major roads and country roads.
Yes. On our road, Bob, we're going to put bike lanes and sidewalks on our road, and
Both
maybe,
ways.
and maybe even a median strip to separate the traffic going the two
I
ways.
think that's, yes, they're gonna be taking 100-foot right away, not onto my yard, onto the people on the other side.
Let's say we live on a road that is not an example of a modern road that can accommodate multimodal traffic.
Let's say right now, it's not even it's barely a road, forget this modern stuff.
I debate at times whether it even deserves the name or the designation as a road,
Yeah,
but that's a whole nother story.
Tricia hasn't heard our complaints about this. Three of us live on George Hill Road, and it's overdue.
Yes. But while you're
I
here,
took the back
Trish,
route to the country club.
while you're here, Trish, I would like to thank you for doing the legwork to get the open space and recreation plan finally approved by the state. We spent an awful lot of time and went through a lot of different staff changes to get that done, but
We did.
in the end,
Persistence.
Now, when do we have to start on the next one?
oh, we're going to start planning the
If
next
you
one
get
next
started
week.
now, you'll be done in time for the next update.
Yeah, well, but you know, because you were saying you were going to be doing like implementation of this one.
Yeah.
You
Well,
did.
One of the action
They are-
items, one of the action items in the open space and recreation plan is to update the plan.
Justin just had a note up there, something about the stream. I don't know. The stream
Well, it
from,
looks like there's been some sporadic freezing, but it appears my laptop has been. I don't know if we want to weigh in on that as a technical.
yeah, no,
It was just a comment for after we're done that Phil and the team can look into, especially if this is a thing moving forward.
yeah, let's talk about that under whatever,
So, do we?
3A. No,
Have we done
But
everything
anyway,
we need with
your open
Trish?
space plan is valid for 7 years, and it was got its initial approval in 2020. So I made sure to attach that approval letter as page 2 of your plan. So
Yes.
if you don't.
So, just in terms of Complete Streets, if I can give a quick update, I'm hoping to for the June 28th meeting have a draft policy for the board to review. That it ultimately would be at the select board level that would have to be reviewed and approved, and they would endorse that. But I would like to, give the planning board a crack at drafting the language so it's not just made in a vacuum, but. I've been CMRPC has helped me to collect a lot of the policies from other communities, so I'm going to kind of stitch those together to fit Grafton's context, and then I'll give the board an update, and then we'll bring that to eventually the select board, and I'll request the planning board endorsement of that. In terms of things for Trish, I think we're all set with that item, but I do note that we have in discussion items the letter of support for the infrastructure mapping project and gap analysis. Sorry, I don't think we talked about you presenting on this one, but if the board would like, I can give a quick update on that as well.
Yep, I mean, it is on our agenda, and if it's relevant to, if Trish, then, before we tell Trish she's free to go, you're also free to stay if you want.
I appreciate the offer.
The tickets are worth the price.
They really are. It's been very enjoyable. I can't remember the last time I sat in on the Grafton Planning Board meeting, so thank you. But yeah, thank you for the letter of support for the infrastructure gap analysis. We submitted probably 5 different proposals to Energy and Environmental Affairs, but the end of May when those were due. We submitted a pretty substantial proposal as we've been, the federal folks are asking us more and more, well, where are your infrastructure needs? Where, what do you need earmarks for infrastructure? And we really, to be honest with you, we have like anecdotal thoughts around where are our gaps in infrastructure, but we don't really have a comprehensive, map of our infrastructure. And infrastructure being not just our roadways, our water, and our sewer, which is kind of what everybody thinks about first, but it's also the broadband networks, the sewage treatment plants, the water treatment plants. There's so much, the electric, the gas. And so we really wanted to be able to reach out and take I think many of you participated when we did that Central 13, I think was where you guys were, or the 495 Metro West, when we did a pretty comprehensive meetings with each town, finding out where their priority development areas were, so that we're focusing the infrastructure on those areas and not in those the pastures that we want to preserve. So it really lends itself to being a pretty substantial component of what will hopefully be our regional plan as that moves forward. But we're pretty excited about it. We must have gotten, I think, 20 letters from towns supporting this, all about a day's notice as we're scrambling to put this together. So it's a pretty exciting project. Well, if all goes well, we're here in November and be able to move forward. And I think they give us essentially like 19, 20 months to do that. So I think it really will benefit the entire region and not just some of those towns that have less infrastructure than others. But I think it'll, really kind of benefit the entire region, because we'll know kind of where there's spaces to be developed and where do we need to focus that infrastructure. How do we focus, if there are funds that are available, whether it's Community One Stop or MassWorks or even a federal earmark, where those funds need to go immediately. And so it will really give us that information that I think will help not only job development, economic development, housing development, and so many other parts of our regional plan.
Yeah, and so in terms of that, I did submit on behalf of the planning department a letter of support of that application on the agenda tonight. I did include a space if the board, I know we're past the deadline for the submittal, but if the board would like to also submit a similar letter mirroring that language, or if they wanted to adjust it in any way, I just wanted to leave that as a space, and we would certainly pass it along to CMRPC as a matter of supporting those efforts.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the planning board pitch in with their support for this effort. And it is a discussion of the motion. Hearing none. Bob.
Aye.
Linda.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Prabhu.
I did have a question. I'll say aye for this, and then after the motion is passed, I would like to raise the question. Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. And you had a comment, Prabhu?
Yes, sir. More of a question. I'm curious, Ms. Settles again. In terms of this grant or this effort, I have a vision for improving the commercial activity in our town. How do we even go about this? Is CMRPC the forum that we bring it forward? My vision is that can we come up with a commercial corridor? The common complaint is that we don't have Route 20, we don't have Route 9, we don't have the Mass Pike, we don't have anything, but somehow we survive, right? That's a fact, but that's also excuses. But there are opportunities. We have other things that we can do. And the vision that I had is if we can somehow try to figure out building a commercial corridor, 7-8 miles, starting with the Mass Pike exit right into where we get off Grafton along 122. I would like to work with whoever it is, and I'm also a delegate for CMRPC from our town. Apply for grants. Is there someone at CMRPC I can work with, come up with a proposal and explore and see? This is going to take time. This is going to take probably 150, 200 hours of research before we can scope it, size it, and then we need to go look for funds.
I definitely think so. I think there are a number of state grant opportunities out there that we'd gladly work with you guys to develop the proposal. We can work with you, Prabhu, and bring in Chris and develop a proposal either through the same planning assistance grant, which is what this energy and environmental affairs grant that we submitted for this infrastructure gap analysis was. And they come out every year in May. So, and what we try and do as CMRPC is really kind of listen at, forums such as this, planning board meetings or other kind of meetings that we're at to kind of gauge and start to develop, that pipeline of projects so that when the next grant opportunity is there, we know that, the town of Grafton is interested in developing this commercial corridor, and then we can work with you to shape that proposal. We worked with so we submitted the one that was more regionally focused, but we also worked with 4 other towns to submit proposals on their behalf. So we'll do the work. There's often a match that goes along with this. So we worked with the town of Douglas to put together a plan to do their open space plan because they'll go so much faster. But we'll also be working with, I think, the town of Hopedale, the town of Mendon, and the town of Rutland also submitted grants to kind of take their master plans the next step as they're doing them in phases. And so we're happy to work with towns as we kind of start to refine those projects, whether it's a master plan or open space plan or a corridor study, to kind of be able to bring you that information so that, and again, these things happen kind of in sequential steps, where you might do one part of it with one part of the grant one year, and then you apply for that second phase the next year, and you kind of keep moving the project forward as opposed to taking one big thing that you can't, kind of given capacity of the town and the people who would play a role in it. 18 months is a short planning period a lot of times. And so if you kind of chop it up into these kind of bite sizes, one, it's much more fundable by energy and environmental affairs. It's much more accomplishable by those who are participating in it. So yes, we'd be happy to work with you to kind of scope out what that might look like for future, whether it's EEA or some other opportunity that comes out along.
Yeah, I should point out, Prabhu, that we have secured funding to begin work on updating our master plan starting, the funding becomes available July 1st. And this is very much a topic that would fit into an updated master plan. I think I suspect that the master plan we have, which is now 20 years old, kind of identifies where commercial opportunities ought to be, but there's no doubt that we should take a fresh look at that, and particularly the idea you have, Prabhu, certainly deserves to be brought into to our new master plan process, however that plays out. We haven't yet kicked it off, but we will be discussing that real soon now. It's not on the agenda for tonight, but as we have the town meeting appropriated some funds for it, we will be starting to work on that. So in addition to any other opportunities to follow up on that, we need to make sure that we incorporate that into the master plan.
That's very exciting. Congratulations on getting that appropriated.
So anything else for Trish? Anybody? Well, thank you for taking the time, Trish. And as I said, you're free to stick around if you want. There's not.
Thank you. I think I will depart and go finish up a little bit of work before I take off for the night. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Feel free to let me know what else you need, Chris, on any of that, either the complete streets, the bylaw, if you've got any further comments, or the master plan. You guys know how to find me. Thanks.
Yep.
Good night.
You know where you are. Okay. We should probably now move back into our one remaining action item, that being Gristmill Village.
Yep. So the Gristmill Village, the applicant has requested a bond reduction for quote as much as possible. We did receive a letter from Graves detailing bond amounts. I believe that was included in the meeting materials.
Yes.
Yes.
We did track down the existing performance security. I haven't been able to confirm this number with the treasure collectors. They were out today, but I do believe we have $384,000 secured for the project. The Graves figure listed was for remaining items, including the 20% contingency, was $150,000. I think that would be sufficient surety to include to cover any additional
Yeah,
work that's needed.
there were a number of items cited there, bounds and various
Right.
things.
Yeah. So there's a number of punch list items to be completed on the project that Graves identified.
Including streetlights.
Yep.
Well, I'll move that we reduce the bond to the recommended amount.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that the bond be reduced to the $150,000 as recommended by Graves. Just make sure I'm looking at because Graves had two columns in there.
Okay.
They had a column for 100% cost estimate and a column for construction remaining. But it's the first column, the 150,000 sits under the first column. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because the subtotal of the first column is 751, so that's right. The 150 is really the sum of the remaining costs. Okay.
Yeah.
Any discussion of the motion? Anybody?
Well, there was there was mention somewhere along the way earlier about streetlight issues, and we received a letter too late for us to see much about.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. There's a bit of a I think context and background on this project in terms of the streetlights. So when I came on board, some of the residents had brought up questions of the streetlights that were partially installed or not installed. The developer was looking for determination of completeness, which is part of what this bond reduction, they're looking to complete the project and move to road acceptance. So in that process, one of the items that was still left was the installation of the streetlights as shown on the plans. The select board, whether appropriately or not, had previously rendered a decision that post lights would be installed in lieu of streetlights. This was during, my understanding, this is during our transition from regular streetlights to LED streetlights, which was an additional complication that kind of, a number of cooks in the kitchen, if you will, occurred. And so in reviewing that, in terms of the post lights, I requested that the developer issue letters to the residents, notifying them that they would be installing the post lamps as they were to be included on the private property. Once those letters were received, we got significant public response that the post lights were essentially not welcome. There was a lot of concerns about digging to install those post lights, the irrigation systems that were already installed, and how that would work. And reviewing it, effectively, it's my understanding is that the planning board decision is the controlling document. And although the select board did vote for the post lights, I would say that there's question as to the validity of that in superseding the planning board decision. We don't have to get into that, but
Whatever's on the plans that we signed.
yeah. And so so what I have done since is I've worked with the developer to install the street light that was installed. It is in a slightly different location from what was shown on the plans, rather than being in the center of that grist mill. It's closer to where the two roads split off into a Y, into the two cul-de-sacs. We also picked up the police chief had recommended inclusion of a street light on the intersection with Pleasant Street on the existing utility pole. My understanding is that has since been installed, as well as that existing pole, the LED light has been swapped out, and that has also been installed and is operational. So
we're looking for 2 more lights at one at each cul-de-sac instead of the post lamps.
So respectfully, what I would suggest is, in terms of the plans that were endorsed by the planning board, the one light that was shown on those plans is installed, but at a slightly different location. The light on the utility pole on Pleasant Street, which was not included in the endorsed plans, that has been installed. So that's an additional light to what the board had previously endorsed, which I think is an improvement significantly. The board may want to consider if, with the removal of the post lamps and the provision of the post lamps, if additional lights as to what were previously endorsed are required, or should be required. But respectfully, I would suggest that what is shown on the plans for streetlights is the one lamp at the intersection of the.
I thought we had approved 4 streetlights. 1 at the intersection of Pleasant, 1 at the intersection of Grist Mill where it splits off, and then 1 at the end of each cul-de-sac. I thought we had approved. That's my memory says we approved those 4. The select board insisted that they thought just 1 at Pleasant Street was enough. They compromised and admitted that it would be okay to have 1 up at the
Intersection.
in where the road splits in the subdivision.
Yeah.
And they were just absolutely sure that the post lights would be fine. And so where we're at now with the post lights not being in there, and with the residents not wanting to now accept the post lights, or they might have accepted them had they been installed before the houses were completed. But now I can understand the objection, and I would say that I think I would want to go back to what the board originally preferred, which was the system of 4 lights. I can't say I'm sure what was on the plans that were finally endorsed, but I'm quite sure I remember us expressing a preference for those 4 lights.
I think, and the consideration there to be is that in order to install those lights, my understanding is that the utilities going to the ends of those cul-de-sacs was not installed. So in order to run, if so required, that is again going to require digging and potential disturbance of the site in order to install those post lights.
Yeah, that's what makes this a problem now, is that no provision was made for lighting along those 2 arms to the cul-de-sacs. No provision whatsoever. And if the existing lighting, the 2 lights that are now there, if that is considered adequate, fine. And I guess, for that I would kind of leave it up to, the opinion of the residents, whether they're comfortable with that. Although I gather from their letter that they're not 100% comfortable with that. And so, but in any case.
Not having seen the letter, I'm not sure how they feel about the 2 lights at the cul-de-sacs.
In any case, making up for any current deficiencies in the lighting there is going to be more expensive, whether it's done by means of post lights or street lights or some combination thereof. It's going to involve some extra cost, and that's
well, but they're
problem.
committed to the post lamp cost, and if they don't do that, then there's some money. Probably, well, I don't know how the costs compare. But how much power do the lights, the type of light that they put at the end of the cul-de-sac, which is a relatively small one, they're LEDs.
That should be a
100 watts?
That should be a relatively low power.
So,
Yeah, 100 watts. There's houses down there, aren't there? It's gotta be wires underground getting to the house. You shouldn't have to start back at the, somewhere in the middle of the subdivision to get power down there for 100 watts. Actually, I'll bet it's less than 100. I think that the old light bulb, lights were 100 watts. Long ago.
I think in any case, the Graves estimate for the $150,000 bond includes $9,000 for 3 streetlights. And whether that's literally 3 lights or whether that's going ahead with some post lights at least, maybe not all of them, I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know what to think about that. But anyway, in any case, the bond that we're proposing to retain is sufficient to cover the cost of lights. Or so it would seem.
Yeah,
But
so we're talking about two things. One is
Yes.
my motion on the bond, and the other is
what to do,
somehow getting closure on
what to
this.
do about the lights, yes.
And I guess there have been significant changes in it was the Board of Selectmen when we were doing this. Now
Yes,
it's
and
the Select Board, a different board, we can,
I think probably it could be as much as all but one of the board that made that decision is still on the board.
really? Well, okay,
I think it goes back, I'm not sure, I don't remember, but most of the current select board members were not on the board that made that decision. At least 3 of them.
I'm not sure what you said. I thought you said the wrong thing. But
That
yeah,
was-
I think that there's probably, given the benefit of the inputs that we have, the idea used to be that the planning board just decided about streetlights, and we had a rule, and it was one every, whatever, so many feet. And it was my hot idea that since the selectmen had to pay to run the lights, maybe they ought to have some say-so too. This was around the time that the town decided to take down all the lights and put up their own lights, back while Dan Morgado was,
I
still
remember
running
that.
things. And, so I think we put a little wording in there about, in coordination with, or with a permission of, or
Yeah.
something. So I think we need to talk to them, and somehow have a dialogue.
Yeah, I think, we're not gonna work it out tonight for sure, but
Yeah, but we might go down there after the meeting, individually, and,
yeah,
see what it looks like.
for our purposes tonight, it's sufficient to know that the bond estimate includes the money for
Yes.
lighting.
And presumably it would put in,
And if there were to be street lights, they would be LED lights, which would consume relatively little power, but, the question of bringing the power lines to the point where the street light pole has to go, there may be some additional work there.
I'd like to, if that is that issue, I'd like to see some details about, can't we?
Personally, I was never fond of the idea of relying on the residents to light the street.
Yeah, no, I didn't think that was a good idea. The developer, I think, was quite interested in doing it that way because he wanted it to be like that. But anyway, enough
Anyway.
said.
So back to the motion on the floor, which is to reduce the bond to $150,000. Is any further discussion?
we did, it's not technically a public hearing, but we did receive a number of comments. I don't know if the board wants to consider any of those.
Well, yeah, we ought to know what they are.
For what it's worth, yeah.
So I'll read, some of these are not, listed as who said, but, sorry, it is from I'll just read them. Currently, 3 additional, not 2, are being requested, 1 at each end of the cul-de-sac and 1 midway on the street. Gristmill is almost 600 feet and extremely dark. A light needs to be installed halfway on Gristmill. There was also 1 light midway on Gristmill. This is from Brian Langevin. Mr. Robbins is correct. The original utility plan includes the locations of the 4 streetlights. The next comment, why were the utilities not installed as part of the original construction? Who signed off on not having that done? 50 watts, 9,000 is not sufficient. And that is the comments.
Is the 50 watt saying, if they're 50 watt lights, then 9,000 isn't enough? Or are those 2 different comments?
Those are 2 different comments.
Okay, so when I guessed 100 watts, it's 50 watts.
I would have to look back and confirm, but
Yeah, I think there's more to them though than just a light. I think there's some sort of remote control or management.
yeah. So part of the, I should know this offhand. I've seen the spec sheet a number of times. So it's the LEDs. They do have a remote sensor on top, and we have a specific spec that we send to developers, and they have to include. And part of the issue of the pole being there and unlit for a portion of time was the developer had purchased the original type that of streetlight, the non-LED, and we had them send that back and bring the actual LED.
Yes, our current
to our spec.
Our current collection of LED lights. The LED lights are all networked together. They form a.
That's what I'm saying.
They form a mesh network, so we have visibility. DPW has visibility to all the LED lights through the network.
I saw a comment coming out of C-Click Fixer somewhere that made me think that they might even have control over how bright the lights were being run.
I think they do. I think that network access includes control of timing, control of sensitivity, control of light level. These lights, I think I'm remembering this about our LED lights, but I'm not positive. But that in certain hours they are dimmed to a lower level of brightness than they are during other hours. But yeah, they're all networked together, so we can fully control them. And that obviously would be a requirement for any lights installed by the developer.
Okay, well,
so
I move the question.
We do have 2 raised hands if we want to entertain those.
Hmm?
So
Do have
there are
2
2 raised hands in the Zoom.
Yeah. I think, considering that the board is not making any decisions regarding the lights themselves, that further discussion of the lights is probably, I think we've discussed them more than enough for tonight. If the continued work by staff, both Chris and the other involved town staff, if they do come to a point where there needs to be a public hearing or discussion of some sort on the lights, then or if something needs to come back to this board's attention, say for approval of a modification of the plan or whatever, that would be an appropriate time to continue the discussion of the lights. I know it's something that particularly the people who live there are very interested in, and we've probably heard more about that tonight than we really needed to, given what's on the board's agenda and not on the board's agenda.
So, given the board's comments tonight, I respectfully suggest that what I can do is bring this matter to the Board of Selectmen for their comments. I will represent, and from what I understand, the board's inclination is to include the 4 lights originally endorsed. So two additional lights in addition to the 2 that are already installed, and get some feedback from the Board of Selectmen. I imagine they'll probably move that to a workshop session, which would include public comment, and then I'll bring that back to the planning board for final.
I heard they were
review.
taking their workshops off of
Zoom.
off of recording,
We'll
but
see.
I'm not sure whether that's happening. In any case, does that in any way impact what we should do about voting on my motion?
No, I think
I think unless there's further discussion about the bond reduction, I will put that to a vote, and any other related discussion related to this subdivision can be deferred to a more appropriate time. So, having said that, I will ask the board if there's any further discussion on Bob's motion. Seeing none, we'll call a vote. Bob. Linda.
Aye.
Justin.
Aye.
Prabhu.
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. So that motion is carried unanimously. And as I said, well, that takes care of the bond. The other issues may come back to this board's attention at some point.
Yes.
So let's see, we've covered all the action items. We've covered 2 of our 4 discussion items. So discussion item B, 3B, conduct and format of future planning board meetings.
Oh, what are we going to?
yes. So as already alluded to tonight, on pending potential legislative action by the state for tomorrow, the open meeting law provisions allowing the essential Zoom meeting format will expire. The legislation currently before the state is looking at extending that to September. But there's question too, if that lapses and is not extended, how do boards operate given current conditions? As I think we've seen tonight, I think the hybrid model does work fairly well. But I wanted to put that on the board's discussion items tonight to
Being the television techie guy, this room, for example, I'm not completely happy with what we're getting, but I've got a bunch of questions we can't answer tonight. Like, what is the internet stream from Access doing? What's being recorded? What's going out? We can see what's going out in Zoom. There are all these different flavors, and at least here on Zoom, we're not getting good pictures of the people who are here, and all the remote people we were able, guests, people speaking to us, we were able to see because they were on Zoom and they had, whatever camera they had. I really like seeing the people and talking one-on-one with them. So I would say that we want to remember that we before the pandemic, we already had remote participation, which I think is principally addressed to board members. You have to have a quorum in the room, and you have to take roll call votes and whatnot. But you could have 2 members, as many as 2 members, participating remotely. Now, before the pandemic and before Zoom, that was done just by voice, and we have phone lines that connect to the sound system in here to support that. Step B is to go to a Zoom arrangement of some sort so that we can see. But anyway, I think it's going to be a dynamic situation, and I'd like us to certainly be having live meetings, in-person meetings as much as we can. I understand, some of our members have real concerns about coming together at this point. So we have to maintain something, but the some flavor of the remote participation that exists anyway can support that quite well, I think. So we don't have to make any major decision. I think we ought to wait till after midnight and know what the legislature did.
It's not going to happen tonight. I just checked on WCVB.
Oh, well, whoever thought they was. They'd have to get the governor up, too, to come sign it, wouldn't they?
No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be he's not getting it tonight.
Yeah, and until it's passed and signed, we don't wanna make any mistakes. I don't think there's much real danger, but, we don't, you think it's gonna include a provision that says this, and so you do that, and then that doesn't make it in there, and you did something wrong.
No, I don't.
I don't think we'd get
second
in
guess.
huge trouble about it, but, the right thing to do is to
Wait.
proceed.
Basically what we've done tonight fits within the scope of the traditional open meeting law remote participation, in that we have a quorum of the board physically present, the chair is physically present. Although I think technically if the chair is remote, someone physically present has to chair the meeting for
That's
the
right.
duration of that meeting.
That's right.
So we're okay from that front. Yeah,
There's nothing to, even if you're operating under the traditional remote participation, I don't think there's anything that says you can't have other people coming in by whatever
Right.
means you have.
Right. And I can recall a couple times in the past where the board in its entirety has been physically present, but one of our applicants has called in remotely.
Mm-hmm.
So,
But we
but
could-
yeah, what we're doing right now with 3 board members physically present, 2 board members plus the associate on remote, and the applicants all participating by remote, and the public participating by remote is within the scope of the traditional open meeting law. True, it's less than ideal in a sense.
I'd like applicants, I'd like as many people as possible, though, to come and speak to us here.
Yes. And we've
Yeah,
all
I'll,
gotten
I'll
used
say
to
for myself, I think the in-person meetings is a good thing. I think we should, as long as we're able to, allow people that don't feel comfortable to come in to participate remotely via Zoom. I think that's something we should carry forward as long as we're able to.
Yeah.
But we should encourage people to come in when it makes sense for their needs.
I'm going to guess that as time goes on, more people will begin to return to being comfortable coming to the municipal center to attend meetings. Having said all that, though, I mean, as Bob said, we first and foremost we need to be sure that we're operating within the scope of the law as it applies at the time of the meeting.
Yeah, which also means guessing what it's gonna say when we publish notices for, hearings and whatnot. One thing, I'm not able to understand everyone out there as well as I would like, partly because of their individual volumes and partly because of their individual microphones. I have less trouble getting it when we're here, so we may need to bump it up to 11, I don't know.
Yeah. And whatever continued flexibility the state in its infinite wisdom allows us whenever they get around to making some decisions on that, we may have the flexibility to continue to do fully remote meetings, although I'm not sure. If it were up to me, I would say I would prefer to be in person as much as practical, but I think we maintain the flexibility of having a significant fraction of the participation being remote. But it's all, it's hard for me to say for sure what I want because I don't know what the state's going to let us do.
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned in a message that what got me started last week was seeing the report that the school committee had just done a standard in-person meeting a few days ago. So, and I don't know what the select board is doing. I guess we'll have to wait and see about that. Okay, I wonder if anybody else down there has anything more to say.
Any other thoughts or comments on meeting formats? It's hard to make any decisions because we don't know how things are going to play out. Other than worst case, we have to go to really focused on in person. But be that as it may, See, the select board is scheduled to meet in, their meeting notice has the meeting here in the conference room tomorrow night, but also has a Zoom link. So they're going to be apparently doing hybrid, probably much the way we're doing it. After tomorrow, who knows what the state will do.
One thing I did see, I saw somebody commented, or a couple people commented in this, somewhere out there in social media, about they just can't see losing the chat, the business where people out there can send us stuff just randomly or talk to each other, I guess. I like the model of it's like it is when we're here in the room. You talk when you're recognized. You raise your hand. I understand how attractive the chat thing is, and I understand it's like Facebook and Twitter, but I don't think that the standards for public hearings are quite caught up with that.
No, and I think that's one thing I noticed somewhere fairly early on in the process, that Zoom meetings were becoming essentially free-for-alls. That it was not they weren't always being conducted as a meeting of the board with public participation essentially confined or limited to public hearings, or at the discretion of the board to allow a public comment outside the context of a public hearing. But that's the way just from the perspective of a board getting its job done, we have to keep that in mind, that while it's easy, it's attractive for a member of the public to be able to send a message into the board during the meeting. It can be disruptive to the board getting its job done, and it's not, the open meeting law does not contemplate meetings being so open as the public has an equal opportunity with the board to participate in the discussions.
Yeah, probably a lot of people don't realize public hearings, we need to listen to the people who want to talk to us with limits. When the third, fourth, and fifth people say the same thing, they're going off. Even that kind of right to public comment does have limits, but people don't realize that they don't have any other right to speak to the board during its meeting unless they're recognized. Now, I think we've always been perfectly happy to hear people, but as far as what are the rules that were underneath what we're doing, people need to understand that it's not our rule.
So that's as true for Zoom meetings as it is for entirely in-person meetings. It's sometimes easy to forget that. So anything else on the conduct and format of future board meetings? If not, let's move on to the last discussion item, item D, subdivision rules and regulations update. And what we have for that is probably not a lot that we need to spend time on tonight. I posted another draft of the subdivision rules updates, posted it on Friday. The updated document, along with a companion document that itemizes the changes that have been made. I think, unless someone wants to, spend a lot of time talking about those changes, it's sufficient probably for now for you to review those and we can continue the discussion on that. There are maybe a couple of items that I have left, sort of detail items that I'm still looking at. A couple of questions around sidewalks and the relationships between sidewalks and fire hydrants. And for the most part, on those questions, I'm inclined not to be unnecessarily specific in our rules. But I'm still trying to round out a couple of those last questions. Let me just check my notes here. That's really about it in terms of, I think I don't have much of anything else other than wrapping up some of those details around sidewalks, which is basically some engineering questions. consulting with Chris and Brian and Jeff on, just to get, sort of get a, to make sure that we're consistent with current engineering practice and not writing rules that are inappropriate. The one thing I did want to ask the board, we've got something that in the subdivision rules is called Schedules A and B, and they're mashed together. I don't know what's A and what's B, or what A and B used to be, but Schedules A and B are 4 street cross-section diagrams and two drainage diagrams. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate for us to just say that Schedule A is the 4 street cross-section diagrams and Schedule B are the 2 drainage diagrams, just so that there's a distinction between Schedules A and B, and they're grouped in a way that makes sense. I mean, that's a totally non-substantive change to the regs, but it's just a matter of organization. I suspect those schedules were inherited from something that once upon a time there were 2 distinct things.
Yeah, they could probably go back to when the rules were mimeographed. I'm serious. Type it out on them.
Yeah, I did take time to redraw all the diagrams in CAD. Gave me an excuse to learn a little bit about CAD.
The few inches difference in width thing, we settled that?
Yeah, I think so. There was a question about Minor Street A. The regs said that the width of the pavement on Minor Street A was 30 feet 6 inches. I'm scratching my head, where did that 6 inches come from? And I asked the board historian here, and he had no clue. So I've changed that. I've just removed the 6 inches, since there seemed to be no even remotely rational reason for specifying that width as 30 feet 6 inches, and all the other widths as just an even number of feet. And I've looked at a couple of dozen other towns' subdivision rules, and nobody had 6 inches to their street width, their pavement width, I should say. So that just seemed like an artifact that somehow crept in there a long time ago.
It was probably a fly speck on a mimeograph sheet.
Yeah, for all I know, someone might have a hand-drawn diagram that said 30 feet 0 inches, and the 0 looked like a 6, and somebody copied that.
The CAD drawings will, of course, be made part of the official thing in a format that it will be long-lasting for accessibility.
Yes. Now, I don't have the desire to spend thousands of dollars to buy AutoCAD. But
there may be a resource.
Yeah, AutoCAD should be able to read a DXF. So I have the drawings form, the drawing file format is a DXF that this open source CAD program uses, but it's pretty common, and I'm sure someone could take that into AutoCAD for further modifications.
Now, but in 30 years, when that board.
Well, this is the thing with computer data formats. There's no guarantee that 30 years from now, a program will be able to read that file that's readable today.
We're relying on Word being readable.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what the best one is. DXS,
Okay, guys.
Yeah, we could probably count on Word being readable for a good many years to come.
Except that the format, the file type will have changed.
The file formats.
Anyway, I think we can leave that for future.
So yeah, we won't spend too much time worrying about that. But for now, is there anything that you might have seen in the recent updates that you want to talk about? If not, then I will continue to wrap up the last few details, and at some point later this summer, or spring or summer, whatever it turns out to be, we can actually consider this subdivision rules revision sufficiently complete to present it to the public in a public hearing, which we are required to do, and then formally adopt it.
Well, we'll vote on it.
Well, formally vote on it, maybe adopting it if we ultimately decide we're comfortable with it. Yes.
since we'd already decided to put it out for a hearing.
Yes, one would expect that if we put it out for a hearing, we'll probably vote in favor of it, but, you know, never say never,
Well,
right?
there's gotta be enough support, you know what I mean. All right,
Yeah, so that, on subdivision rules is all we have. We have bills. We do have some bills that have been presented to us and requires a vote.
move that
I'll
we,
move that we approve the bills and direct the planner to sign.
yes,
Second.
some motion.
Moved and seconded that the board approve the bills and direct the planner to sign on behalf of the board. Discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Bob?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Justin?
Aye.
Prabhu?
Aye.
Dave votes aye. Bills have been approved.
I notice on the website, we don't have, item B.
Yes, minutes of previous meetings. Apparently we have none for tonight. Staff report?
So I do have a brief staff report today. I just wanted to notify the board that I will be on somewhat extended vacation from the 17th through the 29th. And planning department is still fully staffed. We'll have all the provisions so that there will be no loss of any service, but I will be away for that time. So what that calls into question is the June 28th meeting. I'll have all the materials prepared for the board, whether or not I staff that or someone easy around the eyes, if you will. They may staff that, but we'll have some staff support for the board at that meeting.
Come in from the cell phone on Zoom.
Yeah, yeah. If needed, I may be able to attend that remotely. So
Linda and I were talking about that. If we ever decide to go on vacation, you know, we've always scheduled our vacations in the 3-week windows, the 1 or 2 of them a year we get, because I wouldn't count on remote participation from some motel room somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Going anywhere interesting?
Cape Cod.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Is that all the staff report?
It is.
All right, anything noteworthy in the correspondence file?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, well, okay. I don't know whether it's noteworthy, but we have, the first thing that I have come up is the most recent letters from, about 84 Snow Road. I'm not sure whether any of that is something that we have something to do with. You were going to talk in the Thursday meeting.
Yeah, so I did bring this letter to development team meeting, and we discussed the items in it in discussion with the building inspector and the other staff on that. We continue to monitor the site and to monitor the construction as it goes. In terms of when the drainage system is put in versus other sequencing, that's all under construction control. That's not really the purview of the planning board, but that is being monitored by the building inspector, and it's somewhat up to the developer at what phase they put certain things in, and so they are all in compliance with their building permit and the plans as they've been submitted. So
What about that comment about the conservation being close to water, if not a wetland, on the other side of the road?
sorry, let me just look.
In one of the things, there was something about that.
Was that for the 84 snow?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's at the very top of the correspondence file.
Oh yes, so the Mass DEP number being posted. So given the plans that were provided, it does not trigger the need for the Mass DEP number.
But was that, okay, because I thought there was, there are wetlands there. What about it? Kind of thing. How did they? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, we reviewed it with conservation and building inspector, and that was not a requirement of what was provided on the plans. So
Okay. I think that's all the correspondence.
Nothing else in correspondence. We have any reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC?
Yeah, we had the annual CMRPC meeting Thursday night, as I mentioned a long time ago. And it was held at our golf course, John McGill's golf course. First time, you know, I spent a career going through the approvals of the golf club and the subdivision. We're not quite done yet, are we? I think
No,
we
that's
still
right.
have a few lots.
Yep.
But I remember looking at the plans of the clubhouse and so on a lot. And when we signed off, that was I've never seen the inside of the club. We were there, and it was a wonderful place to have our meeting. When our CMRPC people got down there, they were like, yeah, it's like windows 3/4 of the way around a sort of a round.
That's a nice place
room.
in there. It is.
Yeah. So anyway, I just had to say that it was very successful. I've told Janet, the executive director, twice that henceforth all annual meetings should be held there. And since I was just elected as chairman again,
You may have some influence there, Bob.
yeah. Actually, Linda was able to come with me because she's a member of the planning board, and the others could have come. But
Yeah,
Janet noted that Linda was a special case.
Yeah, I was gonna try to make it, getting tied up with something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it
Would
was
have liked to gone.
I'm also impressed with what I came away very impressed with what CMRPC does. And I'm not sure that a lot of people really realize how much effort those people put out, and what we get from them is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I was also very pleased with the health people and everyone else who has pulled through. We look at the rest of the country, and Massachusetts is doing something very right. Yeah, we're not killing each other. We're cooperating, and just 2 paid people in Leominster provided an immense amount with volunteers to that whole area. It's really, over 600,000 meals served to children and people in the area through this year by just 2 people paid. Everyone else were volunteers. That is just an amazing pulling people together.
Yeah, a lot of them. An important part of the meeting was going through all the accomplishments much more expeditiously than the previous time that we had one of these. But they had, kind of written it up, and really, it was just amazing all the stuff they did, as well as the whole crew. 30-some people, staff, just moving home and doing all this work, including a lot of what they'd have to come around to individual towns to do. And they just went right into it. I keep, at the executive committee meetings, I keep making sure that they're not doing, more, and really pushing too hard.
Yeah, working 20-hour days.
My experience with work at home is it's easy to do that. As long as your eyes are open, you're at work.
Anyway, very impressive. We're very fortunate to have CMRPC, and the director is just really terrific. So,
Janet Pierce.
yeah.
All right. Any other reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC?
I did attend the award ceremony. I was on Zoom. I thought it went very well.
Oh.
It is not easy working from home. Ask the folks around me. It's not easy. It's quite a bit of pain with family, and we are being a pain to the family too.
Yeah, they did that. Imagine now we're doing a hybrid meeting. Our hybrid meeting for that was just the business part, and the people could come in. They missed the meal. But I thought the food was pretty good. Actually, not bad at all. It's the first time that any of us can remember that we had one of these dinners where they brought it to you instead of you going to the serving lines.
Right.
Okay, anyway, that was
Anyway.
busy.
Cool.
Yep.
Are there
We had
any
a
other?
we had a town meeting between last planning board meeting where we passed all the CPC articles that were up, except for the one that was withdrawn. But that's wanted to say out loud.
Anything else? Are there any other items which may lawfully come before the board?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we be adjourned. All those in favor, we'll call the roll. Bob,
Aye.
Linda,
Aye.
Justin,
Aye.
Prabhu,
Aye.
Dave votes aye. We are adjourned.